I think I have quite a few names. When I hear someone say Blake Lively, it feels probably because I've been working publicly for so long. More like a public persona to me. It doesn't quite feel like a personal name. I get a bit shy if someone uses my full name like that. When anyone says your full name, it kind of makes you feel like you're in some kind of trouble. So maybe that's part of it. I feel like I'm married now, so I feel like I carry a bunch of different names. And on top of that, I'm always stepping into other roles. Yeah, I think just my first name feels natural. But when my last name comes into the picture, it feels like I'm shifting between different identities. Hey besties, guess what? It's Katie Joy. I've been going back in time, reading through all the articles that came out in August, around the release of the film It Ends With Us. I've been trying to piece together the story that Blake's team was sharing with the media about what happened on set, the creative differences, and the situation between Blake and Justin. This whole thing got sparked because Leslie Sloan is acting like she's been proven right. Her lawyer even said she's been vindicated, based on one reporter from the Daily Mail who said he didn't tell her that Justin said Blake did something. And that was twisted by Wayfair, as I mentioned before. Now Leslie is claiming she's won on this one point. It doesn't clear her of everything else. But when I started thinking, okay, so she won this one, that's one less thing Leslie has to worry about. But then I began to really examine the story she was telling. Looking back at what Leslie was selling at the time, I realized she was really pushing the same story as Wayfair, that it was all about creative differences. Blake had one vision, Justin had another, and Blake's vision was the more feminine one. She needed to have her voice as a woman heard. But Justin didn't recognize that voice. He was portrayed as chauvinistic, borderline abusive, ignoring her perspective and just taking control. Which is odd because if you think about it, Justin didn't actually have to wrest control away. He owned the intellectual property of the film It Ends With Us. He was the one adapting the story for the screen. No one else held the rights but him. So naturally he had control. It was his production company making the movie, and he was the director. Leslie only came on board at the end of 2022, after more than 3 years of production, and basically bulldozed her way through. But Leslie's portrayal painted Justin as someone who didn't listen to others, who ignored Blake's perspective, especially regarding Blake's character in scenes involving domestic violence, and didn't care about her input on intimate or emotional scenes. The overall impression was that Justin was a tough, difficult man who didn't care much about women and insisted on doing things his own way. Which is ironic because anyone familiar with the film knows Justin actually brought in a female screenwriter, Christy Hall, and worked closely with Colleen at every step, including her script contributions. Another point Blake's PR tried to push was blaming Justin for the poor wardrobe choices for Lily. Seriously, they tried to say Justin was responsible for the wardrobe issues, and that Blake had to step in to save the wardrobe after everything leaked to the press in May 2023, on the first day of principal photography. But the wardrobe Blake took over and worked on was the one she chose herself. So really, the wardrobe problems were Blake's responsibility. And as we now know from the evidence, Justin had to confront her about it. Justin had to address this because Sony was worried the wardrobe wasn't matching the expectations of the book's fans. There were concerns that her wardrobe didn't reflect how fans imagine Lily. The outfits seemed mismatched, chaotic, and frumpy. There are countless ways to describe it. But Blake blamed Justin for the wardrobe problems, saying she had to come in and fix things, even though she was the one who disrupted the original wardrobe choices when she joined. She brought in all those questionable pieces herself. So, she even tried to shift blame about the wardrobe issues onto him. I realized that throughout the whole process, whenever she faced criticism, she kept trying to point fingers at Justin, even when it was clearly her decision. Even something as straightforward as the wardrobe, she attempted to deflect responsibility onto him. Another pattern I noticed was how Leslie and her PR team tried to make it seem like Blake was a financial backer of the film. Several articles stated that Blake commissioned a second cut of the film, which implied that Blake and Ryan paid Shane Reed to come in and re-edit. They also claimed she hired the composer brought onto the project. There was even a Rolling Stone article suggesting this. I'm not sure if Blake genuinely believed this or managed to convince others, but during the editing process, some people at Wayfair, there were editors and post-production staff who believed Blake had convinced them she was funding the film. Some of these people still working there thought she was bankrolling it, which is why she was able to take control of the project. People in post-production hired by Wayfair believed Blake was financing the film, because otherwise, how else could she, an actress without that in her contract, gain access to the editing process? She made it seem like she was paying for it, and during the promotion tour, she continued to give that impression, but in reality, she didn't pay for any of it. Wayfair and Sony covered all the costs. With that said, a major part of the early negative campaign against Justin focused on portraying him as an ineffective director, someone lacking vision, unable to collaborate, creating tension on set, and unwilling to consider others' opinions. Much of this was deflection. He was accused of being chauvinistic and sexist, making Blake uncomfortable. Another recurring theme in these articles was the idea that a sequel was planned. Blake was clearly under the wrong impression, probably one of the biggest misunderstandings in this whole situation. She believed Justin had optioned the book to adapt it into a film, meaning he had exclusive rights for a period of time. In the film and book industry, contracts for adaptations usually last 18 months. After that, the option can be renewed, or if not renewed, the rights revert to the author. Blake mistakenly thought Justin held the option for the sequel It Starts With Us. Meanwhile, Leslie was telling the press, through leaked stories, that once Colleen got her rights back, Blake and Colleen were eager to make the sequel. What Leslie didn't realize was that Justin never had the option for that sequel book. There are two main types of intellectual property contracts. One is an option contract, granting exclusivity for a limited time, usually 18 months, and the other is a full sale, where the rights are permanently transferred. Colleen sold the rights to adapt It Starts With Us outright, without any option clause, meaning Justin had the rights forever. He wasn't going to return the rights to her. They are trying to compare these terrorist tactics to what Wayfair is allegedly doing to communicate with journalists and content creators, so there's no paper trail. That's what they call the untraceable smear campaign. I originally thought they had a digital combat team that was untraceable and a team based in Hawaii, but Wayfair denies having a team there. Regarding these email accounts, they seem confused about what they actually want and what they mean by email. They don't fully understand what they're searching for. Their request's proposed modification does not clear up the vagueness and ambiguity of the phrase provided access to. As noted in their written objections and repeated during our call, the phrase is open to multiple reasonable interpretations, defining provided access to as any method by which access might be given only makes the lack of specificity worse. Access could mean something as simple as forwarding an email to someone. When we asked for clarification, they said the intent was to find out if login credentials were given to someone. To be clear and reasonable in scope, we maintain that provided access to should mean only cases where login credentials, like a username and password, were shared with a third party, allowing them to log in and act as the account holder. This limit is fair and reasonable. It aligns with the intent of the interrogatory and avoids the overbroad and uncertain meaning of the broader language. We're ready to respond fully and in good faith to the interrogatory, but only with this limitation. Giving access to a third party's email account could be something as simple as letting your PR person manage your social media and emails. They said, your counterproposal misstates the revised language we proposed, which addresses T after 9/11. They claim the phrase provided access to is ambiguous, but the method of access isn't the main focus of the request. Your proposed revision limiting the request only to individuals who received login credentials is just one example of how someone might gain access, and they say it's too narrow. They want to include other ways a third party might access an email account, like screen sharing. For example, if you're on a FaceTime call and you show your screen with an email open, the other person can read it without you forwarding the email. So there's no digital trail of sending it. Sure, if you're sharing information with the reporter that way, there wouldn't be a record of it, but it's not covert. So what's really wrong with that? I'm wondering if this is related to concerns about Taylor Swift's emails, like the email Michael Gotodal sent to her attorney, and possible threats made. Did those attorneys see that email via screen sharing or screen recordings? I haven't heard anyone in the media say they saw anything like that, so it's unclear. As we explained during our meet and confer, we're requesting information about whether Wayfair, or anyone acting on their behalf, shared communications, messaging, or talking points with third parties by giving them access to email accounts, whether by login credentials, screen sharing, or any other method besides sending emails. For example, putting info in a draft email folder, like the terrorist tactic or any other online place, where third parties could see info without it being sent or received, to avoid detection and leave no paper trail. For clarity, we identify any such email accounts. They responded. Respectfully, your response only adds to the ambiguity of the interrogatory. You now mention several unidentified and subjective forms of access: screen sharing, placing drafts, online repositories, which go far beyond the plain language of the original request. As a result, the interrogatory remains impermissibly vague and lacks the clarity needed for a complete and understandable response. To be clear, we are not refusing to respond. We are trying to define the scope of this interrogatory to allow for a compliant and meaningful answer. We made efforts to help in this process during our call, asking for clarification because the original language was genuinely unclear. The only workable definition you offered was login credentials, which we proposed in good faith. If your intent is to identify, they say the interrogatory should be clearer and objectively state that they want to know about any accounts where third parties had login credentials or similar access, enough to review non-sent email content. They're willing to respond in good faith if the request is reasonable. What's interesting is how this reminds me of the Daily Mail reporting about the subpoena for Stephanie Jones. The Daily Mail reporter talked to someone, maybe Zach Peter or another source, who saw the subpoena on a screen but couldn't take a screenshot or keep a copy. It seems like it was shown via screen share, Zoom, or FaceTime, so there's no digital copy or paper trail. The timing coincided with when Stephanie Jones was filing motions to dismiss, so it almost looks like she was the source of the leak. I don't know if that's true, but it sounds like they're accusing Wayfair of using this same tactic. What I find weird is that no one I know covering the story was given scripts, drafts, or talking points by Wayfair. I've tried reaching out to Brian Friedman and Wayfair PR, no response. If they're really communicating with content creators, it's not me or anyone I know. Leslie is still talking to media, but it's not clear who Wayfair is talking to. They keep saying Wayfair is using covert tactics, like placing info in draft email folders or giving third parties access to email accounts to view info without leaving a trace. Do they know about Signal or disappearing messages on Instagram? Those are modern, untraceable methods of communication. This feels like they're grasping at straws, trying multiple theories to pin a smear campaign on Wayfair that doesn't seem to exist. Since the lawsuit started, all we've seen publicly is what's in the public domain. When we talk to people, it's former Wayfair employees, friends, or family, not insiders. Brian Friedman puts his name on interviews, so it's not secretive. They try to claim these tactics, like those used by terrorists, are what Justin and Wayfair are doing to hide a smear campaign that never happened. Do I think Blake and Ryan are doing something similar? Wayfair parties have never denied some clandestine communications, but even if they did communicate without a paper trail, that's not inherently wrong. Talking to the media is not illegal or unethical if they're telling the truth. If their claims are true, it's not a smear campaign, retaliation, or defamation. They have every right to get their side out, just like Blake and Leslie have done for months. This whole motion to compel shows that Blake and Ryan's team might actually be the ones engaging in these secretive info-sharing tactics. It looks like they're using email drafts, screen sharing, and conversations with reporters and content creators to smear others. That's the biggest takeaway here, not what Wayfair is doing, but what Blake and Ryan are doing to Wayfair. In my opinion, Every accusation they make is basically a confession. The smear campaign just keeps going. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching. Bye.